Hello everyone, my name is Avi Bardoj. I'm back with lecture series on science. Today's topic is going to be focused on very important gas, oxygen. And we're going to go back in history, Earth's history, and see when this important gas appeared on this planet. Also want to discuss about how this is produced currently and what happened in the past which led to that process. And as we know that oxygen is very important for especially for all the animals, we depend on oxygen. We cannot live even 5 minutes without oxygen. All of us need this important gas in the atmosphere. So when we look at our atmosphere, for instance, we have 78% nitrogen and about 21% oxygen, and it's very very important in our planet's history, and it has actually made possible all the evolution which happened on this planet. So very important gas, as I mentioned. So let's go back in history. Now when we talk about history, we know that Earth was formed about 4.6 billion years back, and after that there was a period when the Earth was cooling down, so a lot of gases were there coming out. It was very hot. But then when we go back to Archean eon, that's the geological time period, and what we look at around 2.45 billion years back, we see that before that what was happening was that there were microorganisms, so they were basically utilizing the sulfur, and they were living in anaerobic conditions. So anaerobic conditions are conditions which are devoid of oxygen. That means there was no oxygen or very little oxygen on our planet. So after that, what we see in Archean eon, that oxygen started rising up quickly into the atmosphere. So what led to that change? And what we find is that there are special kind of bacteria called cyanobacteria. They appeared during that time, and they were responsible for producing all this oxygen. How they did that is exactly what they do now, what the plants do now, photosynthesis. So basically they utilize the sun's energy, and they converted the carbon dioxide into oxygen, and on the process they made carbohydrates. So they made they survived in the process. So when we look at cyanobacteria, very important bacteria, especially in our Earth's history, and they are the one who are responsible for bringing oxygen to the atmosphere. And they currently, if you look at even current conditions, cyanobacteria are the bacteria who produce most of the oxygen, including and others are, for example, blue-green algae is there, phytoplanktons are there. But when you look at the chloroplast, especially in land plants, that is responsible for photosynthesis, which help in photosynthesis. And photosynthesis, as I mentioned, is a process uh, which helps plants produce their food. And what happens is that they use the sunlight, they convert the carbon dioxide into an oxygen, and they make carbohydrates in the process, and they use chloroplast. But what we see is that cyanobacteria are still present in these plants, all the plants, and what they do is they are having a symbiotic relationship. That means both plant and the cyanobacteria get benefit out of from each other, and in the process plants are able to produce their food, and the cyanobacteria also able to survive. And this is the process which helps the atmosphere get all the oxygen, and then we can survive. And that's a very very important piece. But I want to mention one thing, that as I mentioned, that most of the oxygen is produced in the ocean still by these microorganisms called cyanobacteria, and also the phytoplankton and blue-green algae. But when you look at land plants, for instance, they are also contributing to production of oxygen. And what is happening right now because of the global warming, now I just want to kind of link this, is that there's a lot of deforestation going on, and then we are cutting trees, we are increasing our agricultural land, we are or we are putting industries, and all this urbanization is coming up. What is happening is a lot of deforestation, so we are losing our plants much quickly from this planet. And what is leading to is there's going to be less factories of oxygen producing factories, I would say, because I call plants as oxygen producing factory. These are nature's factories which produces oxygen so that we could survive. And plant depend on animals because we breathe out carbon dioxide, and they use the carbon dioxide to make oxygen, and in the process they make their food. But what happens when we start deforestation, and this is going on in a wide scale, which has to be stopped, because this definitely impacts the environment and definitely kind of disturbs the balance of all these gases, which naturally kind of work in a cycle and try to and nature try to produce kind of balance between plants and animals. But when we start kind of cutting trees and making helping in this wide ranging deforestation, this is where the biggest cause of concern is, that that's kind of impacting the very way the nature works. So one very important part is that we have to stop this cutting of all these trees and deforestation, and make sure that we plant more trees to make for the losses we have already incurred as far as the trees are concerned. But other thing I want to mention, also very important to consider, is that when we look at the data, for example, going 800,000 years back, we see that constantly the oxygen levels are going down. We have already lost about 0.7% oxygen from the atmosphere, so it is going down. I wouldn't be linking directly to the global warming, but I definitely feel that we do not want to reduce the oxygen level from our atmosphere. And what is happening is that when we start cutting all these forests and cutting all these trees, this is adversely impacting our environment. And as I mentioned, oxygen is very, very important. So this lecture, basically I wanted to discuss about how the oxygen appeared, what basically what are the microorganisms and how they help producing oxygen, but also very importantly the plants. And we want to make sure that we do not cut the plants. So in the end, I just want to give a message that we do not cut all these forests and the trees. Instead, we should be planting trees and bring back the forests we have lost over the years. And if we do that, then I think we will definitely help, not only in the process of saving this planet, but keep the balance which nature does. It's very important to follow that. Thank you for watching.